Hello, everyone, and welcome if you just joined. We've been going for a moment here. And actually, probably what I'm going to do is, at the sacrifice of those who were already on the Zoom call with us, I'm going to let you know who you're dealing with once again and go through some of this one more time. So I'm really excited to have Nachum Plonka, Ph.D., on the call with us today. He is the principal data scientist at the HeartMath Institute. He is the primary analyst for HeartMath's wealth of data from heart rate metrics to highly sensitive geomagnetic measurements. He is the lead researcher for the Global Consciousness Project 2.0. This is a global network of random number generators designed to measure the direct effect of humanity's shared emotion and attention in reaction to global events. Nachum received his Ph.D. in Computational Physics from Stanford University, studying quantum materials and publishing in high-profile journals. He then worked as a senior data scientist at Quantifind Inc, building AI tools before joining HeartMath. His intention is that when people understand the power of their emotions and thoughts, it will inspire them toward more care and connection. His passion for science, coupled with a daily meditation and consciousness practice, informs his empathetic approach to research and data analysis. Once again, Nachum, thank you for being on the show. It's wonderful to see you.
Thanks, David. It's great to see you too. It's great to be on the show. Thanks for the introduction.
Right on. So we're going to talk about quantum physics. We're going to talk about HeartMath, Global Consciousness Project 2.0, human consciousness and its measurable effects in the physical world, the implications for humanity. And then in the after party, we're going to have the opportunity for question and answer. And then Nachum is going to lead us in a global heart coherence meditation. And he is highly qualified to do that because not only is he a physicist and a data scientist, but he has his own deep spiritual meditation and consciousness practice. And you can only do that with us if you're on the Zoom call, and there is still time to join the Zoom call. Simply go to the evolutionary.life. That's right, .life, because .com is so last season. That's the evolutionary.life/invitation. Put in your deets, and within moments, you will receive an email with that link, and you can join us on this call right now. And the way it works is we do the live stream for a while, and then the Zoom callers carry on into the after party where we do the aforementioned Q&A and meditation led by Nachum. Okay, but first, the first thing that we do in the show always is good news and fresh perspectives, giving intelligent people reason to have great expectations for the future of humanity and the planet that we live on. And so I think, Nachum, I think I should go first, because I think yours just flows right nicely into the rest of the conversation.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So researchers at Chalmers University in Sweden have created a carbon fiber battery. And this thing is strong enough that it can be used as structural elements in a vehicle. And it's also got energy density that's high enough that it can be used commercially. Now, it's about as strong as aluminum, so it can be used for a lot of parts in vehicles of any kind. And although the energy density is only about 30% of a lithium battery, when you take out all of that battery weight and actually make it part of the car, you can actually make the car up to 50% lighter, and you can get 70% more range out of it. So this is an amazing advancement in the technology of batteries. And, you know, I was back when I watched Who Killed the Electric Car in, I don't know, 2007 or something. It was about how the U.S. auto industry had first introduced electric cars, and then all of a sudden, and it was going very well. The test marketing was phenomenal. And then all of a sudden they just pulled them all. They just pulled them all and literally crushed them and just killed the whole thing. But it was reminding me that, you know, once we start focusing our best minds and some resources on something, we make amazing advances in it. And so this is, you know, we could have been making advancements in battery technology if it was really important to us for the last 100 years. But now it's really, because there's industry around it. There's actually cars and planes and trains and automobiles that are starting to use this. And so now it's getting attention. And so if this is where we are now, imagine where we'll be in another 10 years, right? Where we can perhaps have something that is structural, maybe even stronger than aluminum, maybe even closer to 100% of a lithium battery or beyond. And then we're talking a very long range and a very heavy possible payload. And that's very exciting. And for me, one of the most exciting implications of it is the idea that we can get in our personal vehicle and fly somewhere. I mean, there, right? Like, did you guys ever see the Jetsons? You're probably you know what? You're not too young
Yeah.
for that. Where they get in the little family gets in their little bubble. It's a futuristic thing, and they go and they fly around in their little bubble car. Well, that's what it's going to be like for us. I mean, we already have technology with kind of large drones, and so if we can power those with light enough stuff and that can handle a heavy enough load, we can fly wherever we want to go, and then we can give the roads back to nature. Millions and millions and millions of acres of concrete, of pavement, can be given back to nature, and that's going to change the game in terms of tending to our planet. And that's my good share. Your turn.
Yeah. Wow. Just to reflect on that, that's cool. And I remember back when I was in physics and in university and choosing different disciplines, and I went down the into material science, that batteries were have been a big area of research. And I often think of it as, oh, they're trying to find some new cool type of battery, but the thing you're saying is more of an engineering feat, and that's just as good. I mean, you've got just being able to kind of marry those two, the making it lighter, making it more energy dense. So there's many ways for us to go about this, and uh, it's exciting and good for the planet.
Yeah. Well, and lithium has been getting beat up a lot because of those cobalt mines in Africa, and the videos that are going around about that, and giving some people, I guess, feeling like they have some ammunition to say that it's better to just burn fossil fuels, um, which is incredibly ignorant if you actually look at the data. But um, this is exciting because it says that, okay, lithium, not lithium, whatever, we're going this direction. We're going to be able to do this. We're going to be able to make transportation electric, and then maybe beyond that, we'll be able to get uh, energy out of the vacuum one of these days.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, my good news comes out of some of almost hot off the press research from HeartMath.
Yeah.
It's work that our research team has been doing, and um, it's right now in kind of the review process with Nature scientific reports, and it's looking promising. But so it's not quite on the press yet. But we've been doing research around heart coherence, heart synchronization, and looking at how we can actually measure the ways that people are connected to each other by looking at their heart rates and their HRV, their heart rate variability. So um, we had this global study. We had people in different parts of the world we were measuring continuously for 2 weeks their heart rhythms, which is already kind of enough of a feat in itself to get 100 people distributed across the world to do that. But then we looked at each of those groups, and we found that for certain ones, it was particularly Saudi Arabia and New Zealand. Those were two groups that showed synchronization with each other. And we tried a few things, and what was similar about those groups is that the participants in them were more socially close to each other. They shared activities. They weren't necessarily together all the time, because there's a lot of experiments around people being together, doing things together, and then their hearts sync up. These people were not together all the time. They were just going about their day. But because they were friends, family, living in a similar area, they were interacting at some point during the day. They were able to, it seems that that's contributing to the synchronization of their heart. So what's really cool is like, let's say one person we're doing a heart coherence. You talked about heart coherence meditation, HeartMath. We're all about meditations or practices that help our heart coherence. And the then you have this synchronization happening where if you're in coherence, those people who are synchronized with you can also get into coherence. Some of our other research has shown that as well. So the promise here is that not we can affect each other, and we can grow not just by our physical actions with each other or by what we say to each other, but even just the way that we're being and showing up in the world. Uh, and that's really exciting. So as more people are kind of tuning in, turning on, kind of their hearts are opening, then even if it's not everybody, and even if, there's plenty of people who aren't, just being those of us who are kind of going out there and being in that way in the world, and that is influencing other people. And we can see that physiologically, we can see that in their health. We can see it in very measurable and practical ways.
Oh, that's so exciting. And it's especially exciting because that knowledge, then, if you know that, then you can try to tune into that. I mean, you cannot, in other words, you can not only be the one that is sending out the more coherent um, rate, but a heart rate rhythm, but you can also be open to feeling that from others.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love it. Thank you for that. Okay, hey, I wanted to just say a word about why I wanted to have you on the show. Um, you work at the confluence of science and spirituality from my standpoint, because because you're looking at consciousness and the effects of consciousness in the physical world with hard science. And I think that that is something that has not been done very much at all. And it is a scary area for scientists to consider going into, not only because it could be dangerous for their career, because they could be laughed at or ostracized, but also because how do you do it? It's a challenge. And I think I love the work that they do because they have gone into this area and they're forging ahead and actually coming up with data. And consciousness and its effect on physical reality, obviously there's a whole industry around, the manifestation culture and stuff and the law of attraction and so forth. And so we can all do those experiments ourselves in our own lives. But for humanity, at a larger scale, and gathering empirical data is a lot more tricky, right? Because it always has to be repeatable. You have to have very concrete stuff in science the way it's set up right now. And so I love that is happening at HeartMath. And I love your background as a physicist, and also that you have a very strong meditation and consciousness practice. And so it was a no brainer to ask you to come on the show and talk about some cool stuff. And with that,
Thank you.
I'd like to start with so, where are you from? How did you end up at Stanford University studying computational physics? And as a follow on, I'll give you right now, what is that?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll answer in order. When I was younger, I'd say I was good at math and science. I still always liked gym better, but PE, but um, I was good in math and science, and good in school in general. And then I got into programming when I was younger. And then as I got into high school, I was in this small, actually Jewish private school, and there wasn't enough demand for physics, but through the sort of general science classes I had taken, I realized that I found it really cool and I wanted to go further with that. So first I was reading up some two old books in the school library, and then I ended up kind of going through summer school, getting physics that way, and then getting I was, remember if I said I grew up in Toronto in Canada.
Okay.
Um, So went on to the University of Toronto for undergraduate and started in engineering, and then realized I like the theory more than everyone else in the room seems to want to build things with their hands, even though everything they're teaching is math. So I so I went that way. I moved towards physics and was fortunate enough to get it came time I wanted to go to grad school. Um, got an offer from Stanford University to go there, and Stanford invites you, you kind of don't say no. So by that point, I was actually married, and my wife and I, who were both from Toronto, went clear across the country to California to go to Stanford. So that was a big move, and we um, that's where it took off. That's where I dove really deep into physics and into computational physics, which is under computational physics, and I was in materials or condensed matter physics, as it's known. So computational means that it's kind of in between very theoretical or very experimental. So not hands-on with lab equipment, but not either just writing a bunch of math on a paper or doing little, but it's more heavily using computer programming for it. And so and often more closely connected to the experiments, kind of like a connector between the theory people and the hands-on people. Um, so it was a nice kind of in-between place to have my feet in both those worlds.
Cool. And were you working on quantum physics, astrological physics, everything in between?
I was definitely learning about all those things, but I was focused on, for my dissertation, on quantum materials, and particularly actually high temperature superconductors, uh, which is a class. I mean, it's a funny name for superconductors that actually have to be really cold, but just not super cold, so they call them high temperature. Um, it's like niche people in the field, like it makes sense to them, but it's weird sounding otherwise, because really the whole thing with superconductors, you have to make them cold. But the goal, the holy grail of that field was to try to have superconductors, which means the materials that just conduct electricity without any resistance. They don't heat up. And the goal was to pull that off at room temperature, because we only ever know how to do it with expensive cooling, um, either equipment or liquids. So that which revolutionized technology in general, computers, everything. Um, they're not quite there yet, and they've been go knock big. It's a very big field in physics. They've been knocking their heads on it for many years. So, which is part of what kind of shifted me into, what I'm doing now, which is less, when you have a bunch of people all working on the same thing, you're all like making these little incremental changes and doing a little research and, adding a little nuance here and there. But when you're in a field that's much more of a frontier, like consciousness, um, that it's a much sparser field. There's many less researchers and a lot more to do, a lot more to try. There's really not that many people who are coming at this with the hard science. So that leaves a wide open field for things to research.
Yeah, in the nascent stage that it's at, I would think that there's some large gains that could be made very quickly, potentially.
Hmm.
So, how did you get involved with HeartMath?
Yeah. So HeartMath, I always like to point out the name, right, is a combination of heart and math. So you kind of know my math side now, but my heart side came. I'd say it really came online later for me. So I grew up an observant Jew and still am, but I definitely would say that things have shifted over time, as I have become as I very just went through various kind of transformations in my adulthood. So I many years ago at some point I was questioning kind of what's my um, what's this all about? Is this I like to take life seriously, I guess. So I wanted to really make sure that I was kind of devoting myself to something that was meaningful. And that led me down a whole kind of scientist like looking for empirical evidence for God or consciousness or something bigger than what we have right here in the material world. And so that's how I got into meditation, because that was a way to hopefully experience some of that firsthand. And just there were many twists and turns on that journey. And along the way, my heart certainly was opened up. And that was unexpected. I thought, oh, I'm trying to find out what's like scientists in my head, trying to find out what's going on out there. And then other parts of me start, the heart and the body and, a more whole human kind of side of me turns on. So um, that's how, once that kind of came into play, I was realizing, okay, this is what it's about. Um, Even just that presence and being with that way of being. So my uh, at some point I was realizing that it's going to be hard for me to actually put time into this, that with all this that I think is so important if I'm raising a family and I gotta work full time. I'm a scientist and I'm working on cool stuff but not really heart stuff. So that is when I started to really look hard for a job that would kind of marry those two sides of me. And that is how I ended up at HeartMath. Itself was not a simple road, but uh, uh, it was definitely it was a worthwhile, journey. And I'm really grateful to be in this position as the principal data scientist at HeartMath now.
That's that's awesome. And a lot of people don't ever get to that point to where they realize that they need to do something heart-centered with their career. It took me till I was 50 years old to walk out of corporate America and being a cog in the corporate wheel and all of that stuff. And a lot of people never get there. They live their whole life on that American dream, white picket fence, then I retire and blah blah blah. And so congratulations to you for figuring that out earlier. Also, when you look back through the history of humanity and the major advancements that came about, a lot of those came from people who were somehow tapped into the divine. Whether they said it that way or not, they had a dream, or there was some amazing happenstance where a mold grew in a lab because they accidentally left an orange, or whatever. You get my point. And so being a scientist who has tapped in to your consciousness and your connection with the divine, I think gives you a lot better chance of making those types of discoveries, because they come from the ether, they come from intuition, they come from that connection, that inspiration with divine source. So
Yeah.
I'll be interested to follow your career and see what comes of it.
Yeah, me too.
You want to
Excited.
well, you want to tell us about Global Coherence Project? Actually, maybe just a quick note about the Global Coherence Initiative that it's embedded within, and then give us a little rundown of maybe its predecessor 1.0 and what 2.0 is now.
Yeah. Um, so the HeartMath has uh, an, initially just had the Global Coherence Initiative, and this is a larger initiative that is, or even if I step back one step more, I think coherence is a concept that runs through almost everything that HeartMath does at different levels, and we do a lot of different things. So there's kind of a hierarchy almost. So you start with personal coherence. How am I doing? How can I bring myself into regulation or positive emotion? And that all our heart research. And then you expand that to social coherence, which is about how am I getting along with others? It's kind of like the news I talked about, the synchronization that goes on between our hearts. So a bigger picture of coherence across people, and then global coherence. Global coherence is how's the whole planet doing, right? As a globe altogether. So the Global Coherence Initiative is there. That kind of encompasses our projects that have a more global bent. So the magnetic fields we're measuring with very sensitive detectors, the Earth's fields at several places across the globe, which is unique even among universities and research institutions to have that many detectors. We have trees that are hooked up as well around the world, and we're measuring their voltages and how are they interacting with things? What's globally going on from that perspective? So the Global Consciousness Project 2.0 then really came to HeartMath just a few years ago and kind of fit under this umbrella of global coherence. And it came out of its predecessor, the Global Consciousness Project 1, like you mentioned. And that was started by Professor Roger Nelson in the Pear Labs at Princeton University. So he originally came into it. I'd say our mission and his mission originally are fairly aligned. Um, we we want to bring more awareness and understanding to consciousness, to the somehow the concept and the possible existence of global consciousness, and the way that our consciousness all kind of influences our surroundings. And it's not just stuff we think and then we do things. It's actually somehow what's radiating from us, what's happening. There's could be several things happening, but it's influencing our surroundings. It's influencing the planet. It's not even just your immediate surroundings that are being influenced. So with that, if you can really help people see that, help convince ourselves and others of this, and what is it even, and just kind of get into it and make it so it's a reality in people's minds, whatever it is, whatever part of it is real, right? Keeping an open scientist's mind. But if we can bring that into the day to day, then that influences how people are with each other. That influence, right? Their coherence with others, right? How am I being in the world, and how is that influencing the world? So, so that's the kind of the mission, the inspiration, the motivation of the Global Consciousness Project 1 and 2.0. And so the original one was actually started a few decades ago. And then a few years ago, we were looking to kind of level it up. The primary result of the first project, which is a powerful result, is they found over 2 decades of research and accumulating 500 different events that they found evidence for this. So let me explain. One of the ways we try to observe global consciousness our in our equipment is we have these random number generators. And a random number generator is essentially an electronic coin flipper. So it's like flipping a heads, tails, heads, heads, tail. It's as if it's just spewing out, it's 1 and 0 bits. So it's spitting these out at random. And you put lots of random number generators all over the world. And for the most part, they're not exciting. They're just random. But then sometimes their behavior is anomalous, unusual. They are not no longer random. In fact, they are coherent with each other, and that's just strange. And what we're finding is that if there's an event in the world that captures a lot of attention, a lot of global attention among people, and so their focus is coherent on whether it's a news event, maybe it's a terrorist attack, maybe it's a global meditation, and everyone's kind of together in that. So if you have a lot of people, or can also be a small focus group, we can get to that as well. but at least certainly from the beginning of this project, it was the big groups, the global impact, and then the devices, the RNGs, are no longer random. They're also coherent. They're also all behaving together with this coherence among people. So it's this fascinating, unusual thing where these, we've had cryptographic experts design these random number generators, and yet they're not random at these times. And so when your hypothesis, so what originally what they did in the first project is they said, okay, well, all well and nice to go and look at that after the fact. That's not really good science. You have to hypothesize before you do it. You have to say, I'm choosing this event, I'm looking at it. And so Roger did that right, Dr. Nelson did that for 500 events. And not every event looked significant on its own, but the statistical accumulation of it was trillion to one odds that it was not random, it was coherent, that his choices, he was making the right choices for events that would set off this network of generators. So, and the common denominator among them is this global consciousness, this global coherence that occurs at the same time. So that's kind of what's the platform for Global Consciousness Project 2.0, where we are now in several ways, we're expanding on that. We've got almost 100 times more RNGs so we're going up from 70 to 4,000 across the world. So and we're already up to over 1,000 right now and still growing. And the idea behind that is bigger network, more statistics, stronger, more sensitive instrument. We can learn a lot more than just making a sort of a vague statement that, vague, rigorous, but vague statement of global coherence is causing these random number generators to be coherent with each other. So we want to get into it. We want to know what's going on. How does that even work? Is it localized? We have so many generators in one spot in the world. Maybe just something happens there, but not on the opposite side, right? And also, I think we're getting a lot more engagement. HeartMath has quite a reach, and just having more RNGs all over the place means you've got these little nodes where somebody has an RNG, they tell their friends, they talk about it. It becomes more of a global phenomenon that people are interested in and talk about. So those are just some of the things that maybe the highlights of how the GCP 2.0, as we call it, is advancing even beyond the first version.
That's very cool. You talked about the I guess local versus global impact. Do you yet have enough data to see if there is like a regional impact sometimes that doesn't go global or vice versa?
We have some, and we do have some initial findings that suggest it, and one that comes to mind, like everything in this project, there's a lot of noise in the data too. And like Roger, had to look at 500 events. We don't anticipate needing 500 events to see something. But, so a lot of the results at this stage are exploratory, suggestive, intriguing, and then that points us in the direction of where to go to more rigorously prove what we're seeing. So, I'll give one example, localized effect. We like to send an RNG tower to these Dr. Joe Dispenza events. And he actually has one from us that at this point, it's at every event that he does. And then I'm looking at the data from that and seeing how did it do, particularly during some of the more intense moments he does these very intense coherence healings. I've been present for one or two events where they did multiple of those, and you can definitely feel that those are a high point and there's a lot of energy in the room. So we're looking at the device on stage. We're also looking at the global network. And we're asking, right, is it just being felt in the room? And we've had kind of different results, but one of the cool ones that happened recently is he did some in Europe, in one in Basel and one in Barcelona. So Switzerland, Spain. And we happen to have a nice cluster. We call them clusters. There's a few cities in the world where we put a bunch of RNGs so that we can hopefully pick up on a local event. So in Madrid, Spain, we have a cluster of about it's 20 devices, and each device has 4 RNGs. So it's 80 RNGs, or there's more details there. But anyway, it's a nice size little cluster there. The tower at the event is about 40 RNGs, right? 10 devices. And both of those were set off. But by actually the course of the whole event, you could see them building up to non-random behavior. So they were internally coherent, so to speak. But the global network wasn't seeing it. The global network was not showing this similar result. So
And that was the
that
same
was
city.
right. Not quite the same city, but it was the same region. It was
Okay.
the same I mean, certainly, especially Barcelona, same country. Um, and that's part of the question with these things. Like, how close do you have to be? And there's so many like variables we don't quite know. It's like, how intense is the focus? How intense is the coherence? That seems to be important too, right? So we're playing with these, playing at the edges of things that nobody's nailed down yet, but we're getting evidence for the factors that are important here.
Yeah. So that that brings up the question of the mechanism, right? There's information being conveyed. There's entrainment, and so I've heard you say in another podcast that it could be a quantum mechanism. It could be electromagnetic, and when so I want you to talk about those possibilities and maybe explain what you mean by that. But when I hear what the story that you just told, it makes me think that there could be both, because if the right there, if the whole globe is entangled and there's some quantum entanglement involved in this activity as a mechanism, then that would make sense that it would be everywhere. But um, if it were electromagnetic, it would be much more likely to only affect the areas that it could reach through direct emissions of the wave. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, so there's definitely, we don't know the mechanism, right? It's open research still, like just like good old days of superconductivity where they didn't know what was going on either. And it was like most of the scientists in the condensed matter community. But so that's research, but we definitely have theories that we're starting to try and test. So it could be some combination of both, right? So just to talk a little more about how those work, right? Electromagnetism, which has always been, I think, has been like a mainstay of heart math. You look at us looking at electromagnetics of the heart and trees and the planet, like we're looking for the way the electromagnetic field kind of interacts with things. And um, the so in this case, you could imagine like a cell phone. A cell phone broadcasts very weak signals, uh, and yet we're able to encode a lot of information. Those are electromagnetic waves, right? So I get whole conversations, I get pictures, I get, right? There's so much information that we can encode in these weak signals. So you could think of it like that, that there's some sort that even because it is weak in that sense, the electromagnetic signals that come from people, are not, no, they're not so strong, and maybe they're attenuating, they're getting smaller as you get further out. But there's a lot, they can still transmit information, perhaps. And so maybe, for example, that's how the RNGs and people and the planet and all sorts of things, maybe that's how we interact. Maybe we interact with each other in that way, even, right? A shared consciousness. Maybe, maybe I'm not directly connected to someone on the opposite side of the world with my electromagnetic waves, but maybe it's like radio towers. I'm bouncing it through different things. I don't know. Um, but somehow we know that electromagnetic waves could carry this. And the electromagnetic force is generally understood in physics right now as almost like the dominant force behind most of the stuff that happens on Earth, just from a very classical physics perspective, right? Um, on the other hand, you have quantum physics. Quantum physics is not it's not a force. It's not. It's kind of it's a construct of how you describe you overlay it kind of onto a lot of the classical phenomena. But quantum physics, one of the leading ways to think of that would be quantum entanglement, that somehow we're entangled with the devices, or we're entangled with again, it could be indirect, we're entangled with others, they're entangled with devices. Um, and the way entanglement, um, the way that works is more, I think of it like, for example, I th I think typically you would have some sort of interaction between two things, people, electrons, whatever. Two things are interacting with each other and they become entangled. Sometimes in labs, they intentionally entangle things using polarizers and things like this. So they'll make, say, two photons, they'll have them both have the same spin, both it's a property of the atomic small particles. So they both have the same spin, whatever, even without explaining what that is. We might not know what their spin is. We just know they're both up, they're both down. But that's a very sort of physics lab example of entanglement. And then what happens is you take those two photons or particles, electrons, whatever, you pull them apart from each other. They don't have to be near each other, but if some observation, let's say quantum observation, would force one of those, um, I don't know if force is the right word, but it causes the collapse of that. So that particle it has to be in the upspin, let's say. Then the one that's on the other side of the world will also instantaneously pick the upspin. And this kind of thing is being tested in labs. But the implications are that we're all interacting with each other. I'm interacting with RNGs. I'm interacting with people. Once upon a time, we were all together in a Big Bang before the Big Bang. Like, there's so many weird ways that the universe has interacted with itself, that it would make sense. It would make sense for there to be some amount of entanglement in everything. Again, it could be, in the way I think of it, very subtle, right? I would expect that the things that are near me are having the greater effect, and maybe this is our paradigm, and this is our consensus reality and what we've agreed to, but whatever it is, that's what we tend to observe, right? But behind the scenes, we're entangled, but we're all entangled. Somewhere there was interactions, and those don't just disappear, although they get smaller and smaller. So there's potential for quantum effects, there's potential for electromagnetic effects, and we're hoping that we can shed some light on that. What we have done uniquely in our random number generators is to track not only the random numbers coming at the end of the process, but all the physics that's happening to get there, like voltages and quantum tunneling that happens in the diodes inside those generators, so that hopefully we can draw a thread from, hey, this is not acting random, to, hey, what's the effect of compassion on these electrons? And so that's one of the most exciting and probably challenging parts of this experiment, global experiment that we're doing. Um, yeah, there's more there, but maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, see what's next here.
No, that's good. Thank you for that. Um, yeah, we've gone a little long, and I've got a couple more questions for you. So I'm just going to fire away. What are your thoughts? Could there be a more subtle field that we haven't detected yet? I mean, we didn't know about the electromagnetic field for a very long time, and now we run our whole existence on it. Um, I think that it's become uh, fairly accepted in physics that there is a substance to space-time, that there's a field there that light travels on. I don't know if that's true or not, but s- or could there be another field that we haven't detected yet?
Yeah. I guess I don't have too much to say on that. I know that it's, the physics community has gone back and forth, for example, if they believe in ether or not. Um, and I think mainstream, denies the existence of ether. Personally, I don't know. A jury's out for what other sorts of fields might be out there, and certainly I'm open to there being more than just the fields we're used to talking about, or even, there's more than the electromagnetic that's within the purview of physics, like there's the strong force, the weak force, there's gravity. These all also are fields. Maybe there's a unified field that connects all of these. So there's lots of potentials there, and we'll have to see what comes out.
Sounds good. Okay, so do you have any idea, any visibility into what's next? What are the next steps for 2.0? I mean, obviously there's a lot, there's wide open field, and to kind of spur you on, maybe. What if you had unlimited budget? What would you guys study, or what
Right.
would you attack next?
Yeah. Um, that's a great question. Um, and certainly something I've given some thought to as the lead on the project. I the first thing that comes to mind is um, the first thing that comes to mind actually was something I was talking to a friend about, Adam Curry, but he was talking about the what he has a company who are trying to make like our cell phones into random number or use to harness the random number generators that are already in our cell phones, just to have a better read on what's on things. And also it's just a cool way to make things more global, make it kind of really so that people can be more aware. But it also would be like a crazy amount of random number generators going on. That's one cool idea. And there are blocks to that, why engineering problems to why that hasn't worked. Um, what else? Like, I think to me, I don't know if it's budget thing, but what really lies kind of at the heart is with this project is that it's not, like I said, it's quite noisy. It's not a clean signal like we're measuring a heart rate, right? We know how to read an EKG, and a doctor knows how to read an EKG. This is not a clear signal that we're looking at right now. And um, and it takes some really careful statistics to really be sure of what you're seeing. And I would love to know the the key, and I know that the researchers in this field for decades would love to know the key to making this a more sense, something where it's more clear. It's like I measure consciousness, there it is, here, see, um, that's a holy grail of our field, I would say. And there have been ways we've gone at it, trying to make, like I said, bigger networks, more sampling rate, like get more data. These things have been tried, and it's just there's not a clear way to get that. And sometimes we think maybe consciousness is playing with us, and like that's not quite the way to go. But uh, but that to me is like that's like I wish it was just we could find a hook into how we can really predictably show this the way that a scientist likes to be able to predict what's going to happen, you know?
Slippery though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, boy, what if you had a device where you could just scan someone and get a reading on their awareness, on their coherence, and then you
right,
and then you could hire them or not. Then you could allow them to run for office or not, stuff like that.
right.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, one more question before we jump to the after party and open it up and have a meditation, and that is, how can listeners get involved? I heard something about a citizen scientist.
Yeah. Um, and I just actually, before I do that, I just see Luis on the call mentioning the biofield viewer, but in response to what you were saying, and I know we're at HeartMath, I don't know exactly what the biofield viewer is, but we've shown something that there were some years ago where we showed something where it pick up the biophotons coming out of people, and we read from that, maybe not precise of what's going on, but at least, love or some heart quality. And that's something right now that we're interested in expanding out more, trying to get funding to actually do the research to create. We already know, like we've shown preliminary it works, and we want to expand that, make it into a real device that people hold. So, but responding to your question, how can people get involved? Um, Yeah, in this project, we want people to get involved. That's the name of the game for HeartMath, even more than the research, is the awareness for people. So we have a website, gcp2.net. You can go there and you can check it out. We've got live data on the website, so you can see what the random number generators are doing. You can see some of our latest analyses on the events that are going on in the world. And if you want to get even more involved, you can um, host a device. We're still expanding our network. If you live in the US, we actually are full. So we're not taking more hosts except in New York City area, where actually you have the opportunity that you could at the time of this, interview, there's still a number of spots there, and it's sponsored, so you wouldn't even have to pay. So if you're really interested in this and you want to host a device for free, reach out to Rollin at heartmath.org, ROLLIN at heartmath.org. Otherwise, if you're anywhere other than New York, and other outside of the US, we're still open to we're trying to get that global distribution. So we want people to apply on the website for a device. And then you can host it in your home. You just plug it in, Ethernet, internet cable, and it does not do Wi-Fi, but you'll see all that in the application anyway. And go check it out. If you're looking to sponsor something bigger, you can actually sponsor one of those clusters, which is 20 devices in one area. I mentioned the one in Madrid, right? But we have 20 around the world. I think roughly half of them are full, but there's half of them all over that still need sponsoring or coordinators to help kind of get them set up. So lots of ways to get involved. We really want to stress though that it's not about buying devices or things like that, right? We really want you to engage, go on the website, learn about it, and bring that heart. Hopefully that kind of elevates your heart and bring that heart to the world and be a citizen scientist and take part in this project.
That's wonderful. And that was gpc2.net.
Yeah,
Two.
gcp2.net.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. And before we jump to the after party, one more thing. I wanted to say that it is your support that keeps the evolutionary conversation going and growing. And that support can take many forms. First of all, listening to the show, watching the show, sharing it with friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is of material impact to the long-term viability of the show. Please do that. Love you so much for it. Share it, talk about it. And if you want to get directly involved, you can go to the evolutionary.life, and we have a members area there. You can become a member. It's very, very cost effective, and you get access to all of the after parties that we've ever done and will ever do, and any other cool content we decide to post there. And then the final thing and the most important thing that you can do to support the show is to cultivate your vision for your world the way you want it to be and hold on to that vision no matter what they throw at you. Don't let it go. It's true. It can totally happen. And then spend time with that vision every day and then share that energy with others, even if you don't share the words. And that is it. Thank you so much, everyone on the live stream. Oh, one more thing from Nachum.
One more thing. I figure I may as well let people, given the whole history I gave of myself, if you do want to learn more about me as a person, probably the best place on the internet right now is just my LinkedIn profile, Nachum Plonka. So that way you kind of get to see the history and how I got to this stage.
Awesome. Thank you for that. If you are on the Zoom call, you don't have to do anything. Just sit tight. I am going to end the live stream, and I am personally going to drop from the Zoom call because I need to do that, and then I'll join back in a moment. Katie has the helm, so you all should be fine when I drop. See you in a minute.